as I alluded to in our last council meeting, we'll be going through a work session of exactly what's the expectations of drawing up an agenda from the state level. I'm hoping that we can do this in November to develop our federal agenda, but this will give you a little bit of a pre-course of what's going to move forward, and hopefully a ratification here for the state agenda in our next council meeting in October. Just for a little bit of a review, real quick review on what we talked about initially before. The session starts on the 14th. It'll commence on the 14th, and that's when things are happening. They'll be going to work, the legislators, and we will also know a little bit of maybe the new players, hopefully, as a result of the election in November. This is a little bit of a breakdown of what we're looking at. So there's a lot of statewide implications coming from all sectors of the state, all districts of changes, and there will be changes, obviously, in both chambers, the Senate and the House. To what degree we do not know yet, but normally it favors a heavy side on the GOP side, the Republican side, but we'll wait and see. We'll be looking at possibilities of a new president, a new House, Speaker of the House as well, as a result of the election. So that will also change possibly the dynamics as this plays out moving through. Normally the session lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 months, but in some cases it's lasted 9 to 10 months, depending on the issues that are impacting the state at the time, the interest groups' involvement that play also a factor. But we're normally in a course of where you run through about 1,300 to 1,500 bills. 300 of them are on average is what the league oversees every year. And gentlemen, we are also on defense in most of the time in these sessions. And by defense I mean in trying to avoid some of the local control issues that we have when we're dealing with our counterparts in other districts as well. As I mentioned too, a little bit high. Okay, we're sort of, okay, I got it. As I mentioned, that these are some of the dynamics that happen throughout the session. Obviously, in different regions, you have different issues impacting you. In particular, that's where the turf wars sort of get grounded by your legislators. Believe it or not, in the consideration of some of the bills moving forward. We try to avoid these super city council approaches that normally happen, and that's really how sometimes we view the legislature, because they try to act as the big brother mentality to cities and towns. And mind you, there are two different versions of constitutions that we're working with. One is charter cities. There's about anywhere from 17 to 18 charter cities. Now these charter cities are cities that obviously have their own constitution, their own amendments. And so there's a separation of, like for the city of Page, is a general law city. And we're right in line with the majority of the other communities and as far as general law. So just understand that your Phoenixes, your bigger cities, and some of your older cities have charter behind them, and then that's really their own constitution that they have coming out of their own city. NIMBY, that's a big part of, I think, what every city and town goes through, is not in my backyard. Maybe there's issues that really they may not want in their district, that they'll like to push off to another district. And there's a lot of issues that surround NIMBY. In some cases, too, you're going to find, as we come toward the conclusion of this presentation, some issues in home-based businesses, short-term rentals. There's some of these areas here that we'll talk about that are really like in NIMBY approaches sometimes. depending in the jurisdiction and where you live. As I sort of highlight a little bit, the legislature works with about $10 billion and estimated $10 billion. And this is the breakdown of those departments that follows suit on and where they spend their money. You can see the areas of education, DHS, there are access programs, corrections, universities, and others. And we're really on the other side here with to your right on other. We're down in that lower right-hand column there is where cities and towns are. So priorities for this session obviously are going to be the budget. It is every year. Everything surrounds that budget and what they're doing as far as trying to compromise. There's a word in the lobbying world that we call horse trading. There's horse trading going on too, into shared consensus, and you get your project through, I get my project type thing. That's what we call horse trading in the lobbying world. But that plays a big part in the budget as well. Obviously, education funding, that's going to take a priority right out of the gate. As you know, the Red for Ed campaign is in high gear. Many of your candidates that are running for legislature, there's quite a few of them that are grounded and taken from the seed of Red for Ed that'll be trying to move forward. But the Prop 301 expires in 2021, and that has a huge implication for every school system here in the state of Arizona. I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail on the potential of Senate Bill 1487 and the claims that are now coming forward as a result of that. I'll be talking about a neighboring community in Sedona that has had a claim against them as a result of 1487 and their short-term rentals. Community and Economic Development Services. I'm glad to see this taking a sort of a center stage because we don't really have a lot of toolbox to work with to try to generate some additional revenue in this capacity. And the influence of anti-government groups, those are your interest groups. They're always coming to the floor with their own interests, but we're starting to see a trend of even more that is going to start take place here. And I'm going to list some priorities here for a page, and some of them I haven't included because I'm hoping to stimulate some discussion and dialogue toward the end. But obviously the preservation of our state shared revenue. We were talking about $3 million, and I'll show you a pie on that where that's divided out. Your revenue streams and direct funding sources, preservation of local taxing authority, and I've got in parentheses here again Senate Bill 1487. There's a huge implication here with this bill that was signed in 2016 that is now starting to really take effect, and that has a lot of negative impact, and it affects our state shared revenue portion as well if we're not following the state law. Unfunded mandates, obviously, we don't like anything carried down to us without any support on mandates that may be issued from the legislature without any kind of financial support to carry out the mandate. A lot of times, we don't foresee those issues, but that does come when you're dealing with money and funding and anything else that comes along the lines. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, this is the pie of what our state share revenue is in the range of close to $3 million. And so, you're talking about vehicle license, you're talking about HERF funds, state sales tax, and urban revenue sharing. So, obviously it's a decent amount of money that is of interest to us, and so we want to make sure that we preserve this. And this is population. There's a formula generated to make these numbers. Every city has to go through population numbers to generate some, and then there's another factor that plays a role in how these outcomes are distributed to local cities and towns. So, for example, our population, they'll go off the most recent census, and then they'll distribute according to those numbers.
Do they take into account like the unusually high number of tourists we have that affect our services, or?
No.
No? Okay.
Good question, though, but no. I'm just going to slide down the next 4 slides and hit some bullets on the municipal principal overviews. But obviously, local decision-making, preserving that is really core to us, and because that's really how we operate. Existing revenue sources, make sure we're maintaining flexibility in the service delivery as well. But preserving the local investments, we support proposals that protect the city's investment infrastructure, capital, and enterprises. These are all things that are going to be on our agenda from a standpoint of municipal principal overviews. These are cores that we share with 91 other cities. You know, so this is somewhat like the Bible talk in development of an agenda. Our next feature is the fiscal policy reviews, revenues and taxes. Obviously, these are all core areas that we sort of like to keep a tab on in monitoring and the revenue generated, how this plays a big role in how we perform our operations here, our projects, things like that. From the local operations side, obviously, we support legislation that maintains local decision-making for elections, administration, county library financing, making sure that those financing plans affect and how they affect the city's ability to provide library services. Air quality is always important, and supporting partnerships that are favorable to municipal education and economic development. Other legislative issues that we also talk about quite a bit are, you know, as you see up on the screen, regulations of short-term rentals, land use, public safety, and transportation. I'll go through those a little bit here on our next slide. And of course, water, environment, resources. We'll talk about that a little bit. And it comes in our planning growth element, where you'll see the economic development. We'd like to see more development fees start happening. Land use planning, regulatory reform, local water decision making. These are, again, all important factors that are part of our daily discussions, agenda items, projects, things that help with the operations inside your own municipality. Statewide water management, that's really something that's taken on quite a bit of a big role. This will in the next 2-3 years. You're going to find that there are a lot of agreements that are coming to fruition. IGAs, for example, it could be with the Central Arizona Project, it could be with the Colorado River. These are all things that are coming up now that are going to come up for discussions. But we want to make sure that we're at the table, and in particular for the city of Page, we're part of that menu on these discussions. Public safety, criminal justice, obviously these are all areas that are part of our quality of life here, whether it's police or fire. But these are areas that we like to make sure that we're sort of covering over, and make sure that we're also in compliance with. Just the rigorous portion that goes along with the public safety and the commitment that a lot of cities, like the City of Page, provide for their constituents and their residents as well. Obviously, the last bullet that I have in particular for this agenda is the Highway User Fund. This is our HERF money. This helps us with street projects that we do here at the city, and it's a big part that is always funding is taken away from quite a bit. If you recall in previous years and every year, there's always a push for DPS to get some of this money because they feel that they're covering the highways, right? So that's how they try to latch on to HERF money. So you'll see every year there's always an attempt by the legislature to take a little portion to help pay for the DPS. Speaking of local control, we have obviously some bills, and this is where the core of my presentation will be today, for us to get some dialogue going on mobile vending, food trucks, that was passed in the 2016 session that establishes a statewide food and health safety licensing standard for and standardizes local regulation for food truck operations. This has been a bill in the making that was denied in 2 previous sessions. But the vending industry, mobile vending industry, really pushed a lot to get some flexibility. And I know this is an area that we probably want to talk about as to how mobile vending we want to roll out here in the city of Page. So hopefully we'll go back to this one and have a little bit more discussion on. But it's something that is we have to talk about. Another local control area is obviously Senate Bill 1478. And this is the bill that was signed in 2016. Again, 2016 was a big year. It was from a standpoint of policy, not a real good year for the cities and towns. But this withholds our state shared revenue if we violate the law, and the Attorney General determines that we violated the law. So let me tell you a little bit of a story of how this all happened. What's happened here is that you've had other cities go try to get out in front of issues. For example, minimum wage and its benefits. And they wanted to have the control of whether they were going to institute it or not. And that didn't play well with the state because that's economic development to the state as a whole. And what you were finding is that there was a separation in the 91 cities trying to hold firm. But when you had charter cities trying to get out and declare their own amendment, their own constitution, it caused friction and it caused chaos with the legislators. Let's speed up a little bit another year to the city of Bisbee. They tried to ban plastic bags in their community, and that created another stir with other communities. And so it was sort of getting a little bit out of control of what local control really meant in a community. And so the legislators got together, along with the governor, and they passed this, I think, a severe bill that penalizes any city or town that will violate the law. So there's a lot there's a whole lot going on here because the fight from the city that this attack local authority by bypassing our constitutional due process. If you recall too, at the same time, the federal government was trying to do the same thing with sanctuary cities. You know, if they were declared a sanctuary city and they were hosting these sanctuaries, they would hold back their federal funding. Well, they got sued, and part of the suit was from the city of Phoenix, and they were victorious in the lawsuit. So they thought that was going to be an easy verdict here to come try to do in our own state, but it didn't hold water here. So this bill, this 1487, till we can come to a consensus, local cities and towns can come to a consensus that we can understand what local control means. That's the only way we're going to be able to get through the needle here on 1487. It's a very strong strong bill that has got a lot of support. So people are thinking, well, what else can we be doing to help attack this 1487? And some suggestions have been is that we need to work with our legislators. We have to work with our district legislators and see where they stand on a lot of our own issues. And that's the other invitation to this agenda, is how much do we want to participate with our representatives at the state level? And how much do we engage with them as well to make sure that they are representing the city of Page? So as a result, we come to really, I think, a core bill that was passed in 2016 that truly affected northern Arizona. And northern Arizona does include the city of Page. We've got to make that very clear. But you have a bill that restricts local cities and towns from being able to regulate or restrict the use of vacation rentals or short-term rentals within municipal boundaries. And this has got a story behind it as well, because they thought they had an inclusion of language to allow the municipalities the opportunity for a business license in this area, but as this went through the process, they decided to close the door on it. And part of the closing of the door came from the Goldwater Institute, and they became a big player. That's a think tank group in the valley, and they have quite a bit of influence sometimes when there's policy such as a short-term rental issue like this. So they went after Sedona, and that's the claim, one of the claims that's existing right now, because they were issuing business license for short-term rentals. Something that's coming back, and that has been, again, this has started with the short-term rental issue, is home-based businesses. And again, this bill would restrict the cities and towns' ability to regulate home-based businesses, would have limited the authority cities currently have over other home-based businesses. In other words, what's happening here is in the same concept as short-term rentals. They feel, the industry here feels, why are you limiting us as well? So this is going to take front stage right out of the gate as well, because there's a relationship, they feel, to the short-term rentals market as well. So, you know, a lot of cities have really worked to try to oppose this, and they've been able to do that because of the neighborhood areas. In some cities, they've experienced tattoo parlors in their neighborhoods. I used that example the last time we spoke. But that's just the tip of the iceberg of what else can come in neighborhoods. So how much do we want to really put forward as far as opposition here for the city of Page in these type of bills? Those are my things that I wanted to generate a discussion, and I look forward to hearing what else we can be doing, and what the take is from the council as to how we like to move forward in placing our agenda forward and making this actually be our document that represents the city at the state, at the city, at the state level. With that, I turn this back over to you, Mayor, and the council.
Questions?
I mean, obviously, that's a big pie you put out there. There's a lot of items in there. The one that stands out to me, obviously, is SB 1350. And my question would be, is there an active effort to amend or overturn that through other cities in our like the Sedonas and the Prescotts of the world? Is there an effort started, or has it not started yet?
At the annual league conference, the first day of that conference, mayors attend, and if they choose to be a part of the resolutions committee, we've always been an active part of the resolutions committee. And out of that, the number one priority that resounded out of the 91 cities and towns, not 100%, but probably 75% of them, was SB 1350.
Wow.
And to the point that it not only passed as a league resolution to be against and fight for cities and towns and that, it was made priority number one by the cities and towns to the league. Along with that, this group, I've come to you almost annually asking for support in a letter of not her fundings, of vacation home rentals and stuff, and we've done that. Another group that we're a member of, which is called GAMA, Northern Arizona Council, Greater Arizona Mayor's Association. It started out about 10 years ago with only 8 members, and it is 20 members strong now, and all those members are north of Camp Verde, from California border to the New Mexico state border. And they have also made that a priority. And Mike is actually part of a committee to draft our response to SB 1350.
Great, great.
To add to that as well, Councilmember, is that, we're trying to amend the ARS. That is actually, and this allows vacation rentals or short-term rentals to be regulated in the same manner as the lodging activities, for example. We're also trying to look to amend to specify the definition of residential rental dwelling unit, that it does not include vacation rentals or short-term rentals. So that's the approach that we're trying to address with our legislators right now. And that's the approach of the League of Cities, is that we have to go after the statute that's in place and try to make the amendments to those statutes.
So finally, if we were to be successful, this might be a question for Josh, do we have to grandfather in the ones that are in, or can we address that problem to go back and fix what's been done, or do we know?
It would probably depend on what the legislation looked like and what it allowed us to do. We may not, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without knowing what the legislation was as to what the potential grandfather issues may be.
Okay.
But it's possible that that we couldn't do some things because of grandfathering issues.
A lot of what the committee's that the mayor alluded to at the resolution, what they're putting forward in the short-term rentals aspect is that what we're proposing as provisions to the bill include legal distinction between shared homes. Remember, this is all part of an initiative of the governor of a shared economy. And so we want to have a short-term rental of the entire residence. In other words, a distinction between shared homes and short-term rentals. It needs to be
Shared home as a bed and breakfast as an example?
Right,
Or okay.
right. We want to require a license, a special use permit registration for short-term rentals, and require homes to have contact information for owner or managers registered in the city or county. We want to make property owners legally responsible for violation of fines, even if not present, with the progressive fines for repeated violations. We want to cap the number of occupants based on the number of guests registered on rental agreements. So these are the things that are in discussion as proposed. Now, I think we're going to probably not get all of this. I think we have to start small with the approach on this, because we have to show our willingness to work with that Senate Bill 1487, that local control issue that the legislature feels that we're abusing at the end of the day. That make sense?
So, as you frame these Senate bill questions, you kind of framed them in that we were already in unanimous agreement. I don't know that we all are in agreement on these. It's nice to, I don't go and read them all night and try to dig into them too much. It's not my idea of fun, but I mean, I understand the 1478, if they hold back the money if we violate the law, that's tied, I get how it's tied to Senate Bill 1350, I get that. But what are the pros? I mean, the state says, hey, look, this is the state law, it governs everything. They're throwing a wide umbrella over the state. So we're setting the law, you guys have to follow it. The towns, you can't make up your own rules when it comes to this thing. There's got to be some benefit to that, or they wouldn't have passed it in the first place. What is that?
Very good question, Councilmember. And I think it's that approach where they're trying to keep the control over the cities and towns. This is that area, that gray area, where we don't want a NIMBY. We don't want them in our backyard. They're playing I'm going to be careful here. They're trying to play that big brother approach, but I think it's too restrictive.
Well, there's that.
Right.
It also is one more factor.
But as you go through those lists of those things that you want to control, that's a bureaucracy that the city takes on. I mean, it's really nice to say, hey, there's a state law, we got to follow it, let the state worry about it. Okay, we'll follow it, and if we don't follow it, I guess they can withhold funds, which is a pretty good motivator for us to follow it. Okay, I mean, in a sense, it's streamlined, it's easy. As soon as we start going down that road, you got a license, you got to do this, you got to do that. Then you're also squashing some of those entrepreneurs that, if there's less bureaucracy at the state level, we're going to take it on here. I'm not for or against it just yet. I'm just weighing it out. I'm just throwing out there the idea that I get the league is, I get the issue, and I know what the league stance is, but I'm just wondering on all these, I mean, local control of food trucks, every time we say we want local control, then it comes with a price,
Absolutely.
right? And are we ready to pay that price?
Well, and the opposite is also true. If we lose our local control, that also comes at a price. So, I don't think that, at least my position is I don't want to forbid them or something like that, but when I've got one across the street from me, okay? It's a 2-bedroom place. I have seen 16 people in there overnight. That's not safe. Now, when our fire department responds to an incident over there of a fire, what are they dealing with? We don't have control over those type of things. Most of the stuff that the other cities and towns are looking for is the fact that they've got a license so we can monitor how many people are supposed to be there. If there is a problem, who do we contact? I.e., how many people are in that house? Well, we don't know because we got nobody to contact to find out that information. So there's some parts of that we're just looking at. And then there are some, besides the health and safety issues, there are some neighborhood issues. We can't control them as far as a single-family residence from the standpoint that you've got different people in there every night. And so, the problem makers left last night or this morning. Well, what about day after tomorrow? And you've got that same issue we have a couple in town that are party houses. They're known to come up here and party. And I think that they actually list those groups. He lives next by one. And it is a problem, because we don't even know who we can contact to say, hey, look, you've got an issue with your renters, you need to address it. So that's just some of the things.
I'm just weighing it out, because obviously I'm just looking at it from both sides and trying to weigh these things out, because it really comes down to this question of local control versus state control. I get what's at the stake here. And it's not, you laid it out nicely, I really appreciate that. I guess one of my next questions to you, Michael, is, okay, let's say we did have a consensus as a council, and we said, okay, we support 1478, we're against, 1478, we're for 1350. We've already listed things, we do a letter, we're in GAMA, we're in the League of Cities, we've drafted things. What more specifically, when you say we need to have a place at the table, what do you need from us? What do we need to do?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. Picking up the phone and calling our legislators, our representatives, could be one area that we can work on just a little bit. they need to hear from the city of Page. And they need to hear from the people that are elected. I mean, they're going to hear from constituents, residents, businesses, but I think what is important to our legislature as a whole is hearing from the elected officials. You know, that is really key. And for us, that also puts us in the game when you've got 4 or 5 council members representing the city. You know, I don't want to say hammering, but voicing our support or voicing our opposition to a particular issue or cause. This is how we play, and this is how we get known as an inclusion in the state. This is how we talked about coming forward and how do we get presence outside of our own city. This is a great opportunity for us to get the recognition in opposition or in support, but they like to hear from elected officials. And so I appreciate that question because I think that's the core of what I do want to present in sharing is that we need to get involved and show that we're here in the city and that we have issues. Because we do. And I'd like to not to the federal, but when you have presence in the state, that gives you that prerequisite to get into the federal side. So I hope I answered that question. The other thing, Council Member 2, and I hope I can answer a little bit more clarity to your previous question. We're not going to win all the time, whether we try to amend or we try to make change. But what we want to do is develop a balance. In the case of the short-term rentals, we want to, like the industry, the hotels and resorts, they want some fairness, you know, because they're being held accountable, you know, to business license, to a lot of other compliance issues where they don't see that being shared with our Airbnbs and your short-term rentals. So that's something I wanted to stress with that.
And Mike, I was just going to say that, you know, I can't count the number of people that have asked me about that question. You know, when are you going to do something about all these rentals everywhere? There's no place to rent in town. I can't find an apartment. You know, I've lost track of how many people have came to me on that, and that's the whole reason I'm interested in trying to do something on 1350. I think.
When we were the league, one of our breakout sessions was on SB 1350 and its implications throughout the state. The guest speaker at that particular breakout session did a lot of research on all cities and towns in Arizona, and I found it very interesting that he broke out how many operators there were, and he did this through a lot of research and having people look at what's happening and going online, researching who's booking rooms where and stuff like that. And so these are estimated figures, and they're probably on the low side. If you take Phoenix, it had the lowest number, or it had the highest number of vacation home rentals that this agency was able to find, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood. Don't have it by number, but I should get it. I had it, and I lost that book that night that it was in that. Yeah, the attaché. So anyway, Phoenix had approximately, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 3,500 vacation home rentals. That sounds like a lot. But when you take the fact that how many homes are in Phoenix, it's not a dent. Page, I do remember that number. Page had 225 vacation home rentals operating in the city.
On
200
on the books.
No, this is not on the books. This is behind the books. Total. Some of them are legit and known.
Okay.
Others are operating under the table.
Okay.
225. That is our housing market.
Mm-hmm.
That is our housing market. You know, that's, 3,500 for Phoenix. That's nothing. But you take 225 homes out of our market, no wonder we don't have any rentals. No wonder we don't have any homes for sale. It's huge. And I brought that point up during that discussion. I says, when you look at this perspectively and per capita by the population of Page as compared to Phoenix, it is a huge, huge issue for us.
And I agree with you, man. I'm just looking at it, and as I look at this too, I would just kind of throw this out there. I've been on for 5 years. We took on code enforcement. Now, that's a local control issue. Where are we with code enforcement after 3 or 4 years of trying to do that? I don't know that we're anywhere closer than what we wanted to start. We wanted to clean up Page. We wanted to, and we put in this whole new code. We rewrote the code. We've passed it. We've gone through 2 or 3 code enforcers. We haven't done a really good job. I mean, I'd like to say we did a good job, but I think I'd be lying. And we haven't done a great job on doing what we wanted to do with that local control. I'm for local control, but it comes with the price, and that price is, are we ready to pay it? Because we sure haven't been able to pay it with our code enforcement. I'm just saying.
We haven't, I agree, Mike, we haven't executed well.
Right.
And it's one thing to advocate for local control on things we don't have control of, but if we can't execute on the things we do have control over, we need to step back and go back to how do we better execute on what we find is a fundamental value to what we hold. But on the other SB 1350 issue, there's a fairness, as Mike alluded. It's one thing to have our hotels adhere to a whole host of regulatory requirements. I mean, way beyond what we, and at the same time to displace those customers from a hotel that we are getting 4.31% surcharge tax over on top of 3% sales tax to a vacation home rental that's not registered, not licensed, not anything.
I get you.
The state can't even, because they've eliminated the process to even identify who they are. How do we possibly account for or do an audit of the lost revenue that's in our favor from not getting, number one, 3%, or 4.31% we're losing from our hotel tax? And I think he said it right. We're not going to get everything we want. I'd like there to be some kind of a parking circulation. I have a VRBO down the street from me. It's got 2 single-car driveway, 2. And he's got 18 guests that he advertises to fill. And I've experienced days where there's not a single spot on the street other than just very narrow corridors for everyone to get in and out of their driveway because of cars and boats lined up on both sides of the road. And so, we're not going to get that, but if we can get accountability in terms of some licensing to identify who the players are and get them to play fairly, then I think we've won something.
Just wanted to point out one thing on this agenda item. It's a 2019 state legislative agenda for City Council. And what Mike presented to us was highlights of some of the things that are issues. Those may not be something that we as a group make the agenda or want the agenda to be on the agenda. There are possibly other things out there that we need to look at. So he's presenting what he feels are the highlighted items and of concern. It's up to us as we get further along in this process to actually direct what that agenda should be. But one thing I do agree with, whether or not I agree with every item on here or what we actually end up with, what I do agree is we need to be a player and at the table. And he's right about being able to reach out and talk to our legislators. Another thing that's very important is bills come up for a vote at the table. And we used to utilize it a few years ago a lot, and with past councils. the state's made it a little bit harder to do than it used to be, and that's a request to speak. When a vote's coming up on an item, he's shaking his head because he's used it, I've used it, and Scott Sadler used to use it a lot. And we were able to get some things changed for the betterment of, particularly of a boat industry in our city, because nobody else had what's going on. We were able to get a bill passed because they were going to tax transport of boats, commercial boats, in the city of Page. Didn't have anything to do with the rest of the state at all. And we were able to get that voted down because we reached out and contacted our legislators the day of the vote and we were telling them, vote no, vote no, vote no. And we were able to have other cities help us out to do that same thing because we were playing with all of them. And Cook was a part of that.
On that note, I'd like to try to get our legislators to come to our meeting. I know we had Jennifer Benally on the agenda one time, and she never showed up. In the last 5 years, I've never seen any of our state legislatures here, so I'd like to force them to come to a meeting.
We will definitely work on that.
Show up to the places they represent.
But they need to hear from us. And through the session, I'll be coming back on the city manager's business section. I'm going to use that through the session and bring you up to speed as to what bills we need to be participating in. And when there's a vote going through committees, there'd be nothing more for me to see than, because they recite the vote, the people in opposition in support of a bill through every committee before they render their decision. And I would love to hear the City of Page, Councilmember Tapan opposes. City of Page, Councilmember Warner opposes. I'd like to be part of those readings, because then what's going to resonate in the state, that, hey, Page is, but where's Page? What's Page, well, why are they opposing?
That would be the first question.
Exactly.
First page.
No, but that's where we need to be. And you know what, you'll be surprised the calls that you'll receive from your own colleagues. Hey, why are you in opposition to this? We support that. Well, we can tell them, well, in our district, this is happening. But that dialogue starts, and that's how it's going to spread for us from a legislative level.
So I don't have any time, I don't have any problem picking up the phone, and I'll do the homework on it so that I know it better than I do now. Back to your pie graph, though, on there, what do we have, was the $2.2 million coming from the state? 2.9?
That's what the,
It was more like the second slide, or third slide, I think it was.
Can you give me that faster, Kane? Third slide.
Third or fourth.
Pie chart slide.
There you go.
There it was.
You passed it
Go back.
One more.
to the pie chart.
All right. So 2.9. So I, as a city councilman, I sit here and say, okay, what can I do? I can research, I can make a call, I can support letters again. When it comes to this money, us getting it, you can help me by teaching me what I need to do, because this is money we need to get regardless. Right?
Right.
So this is, to me, this is like, hey, we have to fight for the dollars that come to Page, 2.9 million. I'm willing to go to the table and fight, even after I'm off of council, I'm willing to go and make those calls. But what do I need to do on this specific?
Let me tell you, I'll just use a couple areas here. Listen, for example, on the HERF funds, we received, what,
Orange.
remember that?
908?
908, yeah.
Listen, we can tell our legislators, look, we're in a rural community, we're isolated, we're remote, and our streets are part of our infrastructure, and we're in dire need of those repairs. That money is critical to our general fund. It helps, we have some, we apply some of our employees with this as well, through the streets, through Public Works Department. I'll lay out those bullets for you with that. On our urban shared revenue, that's our police and fire. That helps us with our firemen, our policemen, and I can't tell you enough with the area that we have to protect out here, on our assets that are here, and the need and the importance of those firemen and those policemen. I'll break those down to you where you can recite how that affects us here with the city of Page.
Yeah, and that's really helpful.
Okay.
Man, these microphones pick up everything.
Yeah, because that 2.958, is that what's available, or is that what we actually receive?
That is our allocation. That's what's distributed to us in quarterly payments. And keep in mind, this is 2 years in arrears, so we're really we're receiving 17 right now, okay? So next year we'll be receiving 18 funds, but it's 2 years in the making, this is how we're receiving the funds.
So like vehicle, I mean, it would be helpful to do what you know, how is that allocated, like vehicle license? I've never seen how that's appropriated.
We'll do that layout for you. And I don't know the numbers of how that affects us here. But I know the pie itself is the parties that play a big part here and how we can bring that to light a little bit. I can bring you a chart and line up these 4 pies and show you what goes behind this.
So this was an introductory to what Mike's plan is moving forward. So we're going to definitely be having some more meetings on this as we get a little bit closer into November and December, and then finalize a plan, and all have an opportunity to be a part of that making. So if there's no further questions, I will go ahead and adjourn. Is there any further questions? Okay, we are adjourned from our work session. We will be starting our regular scheduled council meeting at 6:30. Thank you.